You remember that feeling when your favorite cartoon just disappeared? One day it's there, every afternoon after school. The next day, gone. No explanation, no finale. Just empty air where something you loved used to be. That's what happened to an entire generation of kids who watched SilverHawks. 65 episodes, 12 weeks, then nothing. For decades, it felt like a fever dream. Did we imagine those cyborg bird heroes fighting a mob boss in space? Was that real? It was real. And most people have no idea what actually happened to it. The story everyone tells is simple. Cheap Thundercats ripoff. Failed. Forgotten. But that's not the whole truth. Not even close. Because when you go back and watch it from episode 1 to 65, when you see how it started and why it ended, you realize something nobody talks about. This show deserved better than it got. So if you've spent years wondering what happened to those metal-winged heroes you barely remember, or if you've never heard of SilverHawks and you're curious why a show that lasted 3 months still has people talking about it 40 years later, stick around, because we're covering the entire story, beginning to end, everything that happened, and everything that went wrong. And before we start, if you're the kind of person who wants to know the full story behind the cartoons you grew up with, not just the highlights, the actual complete history, subscribing helps more of these get made. Notifications mean you won't miss the next one when it drops. That's all I'll say about that. Now let's talk about how this thing even started. 1985. Thundercats is printing money. Not just doing well printing money. Action figures flying off shelves. Kids everywhere have Lion-O swords. The show is massive. And Rankin, Bass, the studio behind it, knows they've got lightning in a bottle. So naturally, they want to catch it twice. The question is how? Do you make a sequel, a spin-off, something completely different? They chose option 4, make the exact same thing, but change just enough so people don't notice. Their pitch was literally, Thundercats in space. That's not me paraphrasing. That's what they said internally. Take the formula that works: animal-themed heroes, transformation sequences, toy-friendly vehicles, a team of villains, and just move it to outer space. Swap cats for birds. Swap magic for technology. Done. On paper, it's genius. You've already got the animation studio lined up, Pacific Animation Corporation in Japan. The same people who worked on Thundercats. Many of them former Topcraft employees who would eventually form Walt Disney Animation Japan. You've got the same executive producers, Arthur Rankin Jr. and Jules Bass. Same voice actors, same composer. You're basically printing money again, right? Except there was a problem nobody saw coming, and it would kill the show before it even had a chance. See, the toy company that made Thundercats figures, LJN, was supposed to do SilverHawks too. Everything was set up that way. The show was being designed around specific toys, specific vehicles, specific playsets that LJN would manufacture. Then LJN pulled out. Last minute. Just said no thanks, we're not doing it. Kenner stepped in to save the deal, but by that point, production was already moving. Scripts were written. Animation was in progress. The show was designed for toys that didn't exist yet, made by a company that wasn't supposed to be making them. This is the crack in the foundation. You don't see it yet, but it's there, and eventually the whole thing collapses because of it. Meanwhile, Rankin, Bass is trying to make this show on a budget that's already tight, about $285,000 per episode. For comparison, Joe was spending over $400,000. That difference matters when you're trying to animate a show about cyborg space heroes with vehicles and transformation sequences and alien worlds. So they cut corners. They reuse footage. A lot of footage. The same transformation sequences, over and over and over. We're talking 10% of every episode is just recycled shots of the characters spreading their wings and striking poses. When you're watching one episode, it's fine. When you're watching all 65, it gets old fast. But they pushed forward anyway, building this universe from scratch. This weird blend of science fiction and crime drama that nobody else was doing. The Limbo Galaxy. The 29th century. Cyborg bird. People fighting organized crime in space. And somehow, despite all the chaos behind the scenes, they made it to air. September 8th, 1986. The first episode hit syndication. It's called The Origin Story. Not even trying to be subtle, and it moves faster than you'd expect. Commander Stargazer, this grizzled old cyborg running a space station called Hawkhaven, gets the worst news possible. Monstar, the most dangerous criminal in the galaxy, has escaped from Penal Planet 10. And Monstar isn't just dangerous because he's a criminal. He's dangerous because he found this light beam from something called the Moon Star with an asterisk, because apparently that's a thing we're doing and it transforms him. He goes from this withered little creature into a massive, glowing-eyed, armor-plated monster. It's his power-up, his transformation, his whole identity. Sound familiar? It should. It's basically the Thundercat's sword, just reskinned. So Stargazer does the only logical thing. He calls Earth and asks for volunteers to get turned into cyborg bird warriors. Full body modification, metal wings, space flight, the works. And people volunteer, which raises questions about Earth's recruitment standards in the 29th century. But whatever. Your main team is Quicksilver the leader. Silver-haired, stoic, the guy who makes the tough calls. Bluegrass, the pilot who plays guitar, because why not give him two character traits at once? He's voiced by Larry Kenney, the same guy who did Lion-O, and you can absolutely hear it in the delivery. Then you've got the twins, Steelheart and Steelwill. Their whole gimmick is they both have mechanical hearts, and they share an empathic bond. If one gets hurt, the other feels it. If one's in danger, the other knows. It's actually kind of dark when you think about it. Imagine living your entire life feeling your siblings' pain. And finally, there's Copper Kid. He's from a mime planet, an entire planet of mimes. He can't talk, communicates through gestures and electronic beeps, and he's a genius inventor. Somehow, he ends up being one of the most memorable characters, despite never saying a word. The origin episode doesn't waste time. Recruitment, transformation, first battle with Monstar, establishing the base, meeting the villains all in 22 minutes. It's breakneck pacing because they know exactly what they're doing. Get to the action, get to the toys, keep it moving. And right away, you see the formula lock into place. Monstar hatches a scheme. The SilverHawks find out. Big space battle, transformation sequences. Monstar escapes to fight another day. Rinse, repeat, 65 times. But here's what people forget, or maybe never noticed in the first place: the villains were always more interesting than the heroes. Montime Star doesn't work alone. He's got a crew, a mob, actual organized crime, but in space, which is such a weird angle for a kid's cartoon that it almost feels ahead of its time. You've got Yes Man, who is exactly what his name implies. Monstar's groveling assistant, who agrees with everything, gets yelled at constantly, and clearly hates his job but can't quit. He's a space squid who sounds like a defeated middle manager, and honestly, he's relatable. Hardware is the gadget guy. Metal jaw, gravelly voice, builds all the weapons and traps. He sounds like he walked out of a 1940s gangster film, which is perfect for the mob aesthetic they're going for. Melodia shoots musical notes as weapons and flies around on a keytar-shaped spaceship. Yes, a keytar. It's the 80s. They couldn't help themselves. Fun fact, she's voiced by Maggie Wheeler, who later played Janice on Friends. Completely different vibe. Buzzsaw is half man, half buzzsaw. That's his entire character. He's a buzzsaw with a personality. Pokerface is a robot with a slot machine in his chest, who talks exclusively in gambling metaphors, which gets old, but also kind of works. And Mumbo Jumbo is this space witch with a magic tuning fork who honestly feels like they just threw darts at a board of random ideas. They all work for Monstar out of this base called Brimtime Star, another asterisk. They really committed to that, and he treats them like employees, not minions, employees. He yells at them when they fail, threatens to dock their pay, talks about firing them if they screw up again. It's The Sopranos for kids, and it shouldn't work, but it does. Because while the SilverHawks are noble and heroic and give inspiring speeches about justice and teamwork, the mob feels real. They bicker, they fail, they try again. They've got personalities and grudges and actual dynamics between them. The heroes are fine, they do their job. But the villains? The villains are actually fun to watch. So the show settles into its groove. Every episode, same basic structure. Monstar comes up with a plan: steal the artificial sun, rob a space bank, kidnap someone important, build a super weapon. The SilverHawks find out. They fly in. Big battle. Transformation sequences that you've already seen 5 times this week. Monstar escapes. Repeat tomorrow. There are vehicles everywhere because Kenner needs kids to want the toys. New gadgets get introduced. New powers get showcased. Everything is designed to be sold in stores. And that recycled footage just keeps coming. Same shots, same angles, same transformation sequences. Every single episode. Quicksilver spreading his wings, Bluegrass strumming his guitar, the twins activating their steel hearts. If you watch the show straight through, you'll see these sequences dozens and dozens of times. It's a budget thing. They couldn't afford to animate new footage every time, so they reused what they had. Makes sense financially. Brutal for the viewing experience. Midway through the season, they introduce a new character named Hotwing. He's a magician, an actual space magician with illusion powers. But here's the catch, his powers only recharge every 14 years. So he shows up in his debut episode, Hotwing hits Limbo, does some cool magic tricks, saves the team, joins the crew, and then for the rest of the series, he's just there, a regular guy. Occasionally reminding people he used to have powers but can't use them anymore. It's almost tragic. He's literally the magician who ran out of magic. Oh, and his voice actor changed partway through. Started as Adolf Caesar, then switched to Doug Prees. No explanation. No in-universe reason. Just a different voice one day, and if you weren't paying attention, you might not even notice. There are some two-part episodes that try to break up the formula. The hardware trap has hardware going rogue without Monstar's approval, building his own schemes. Gang War, later in the season, shows the mob turning on itself, fighting for control, which is genuinely one of the better storylines because it gives the villains actual stakes. But mostly, it's the same thing every day. Mob scheme. SilverHawks stop it. Bluegrass randomly quizzes Copper Kid on astronomy facts for educational purposes. Credits roll. No major character development. No deaths. No betrayals. No big shifts in tone. Just straightforward, episodic, space hero crime fighting, which would have been fine if the show had time to grow. If it had gotten a second season. If it had been given the chance to evolve. But that's not what happened. They made 65 episodes. Aired every single one between September and December of 1986. 12 weeks. 3 months. That's it. 12 weeks. Think about that. Most shows take years to air that many episodes. SilverHawks burned through its entire run in the time it takes to finish a school semester. Daily syndication. New episode every weekday. No breaks. No gaps. Just full speed ahead until the batch was done. And then it stopped. Episode 65 ends like any other episode. Monstar gets away. The SilverHawks win the battle, but not the war. See you tomorrow for the next adventure. Except there was no tomorrow. No next adventure. No second season. Nothing. Why? The toys didn't sell. Remember that problem at the beginning? LJN pulling out, Kenner stepping in late, the toys being designed by a different company than originally planned. That crack in the foundation finally broke everything. By the time the Kenner toys hit stores, the show had already finished airing. Kids were confused because the toys looked different from the cartoon. The marketing was off. The momentum was gone. Thundercats toys flew off shelves. SilverHawks toys sat there. And in the 1980s, if the toys didn't sell, the show died. That's how it worked. Make 65 episodes for the syndication package. Pray the merchandise carries it forward. And if it doesn't, move on to the next thing. Rankin. Bass moved on. The rights eventually got sold to Warner Brothers after they acquired Lorimar. The show disappeared from TV. No reruns. No home video releases. Nothing. It just vanished. For years, SilverHawks became this thing people kind of half remembered. Wait, wasn't there a show with space birds? Or did I make that up? It felt like a shared hallucination. Something that might have existed but you couldn't quite prove. Cartoon Network brought it back briefly in the early 2000s, but even that didn't last. A few months of reruns, then gone again. And for most people, that was the end of the story. Except it wasn't. Not completely. Because something strange happened. A cult following started forming. Quietly. Online. People who remembered the show, who'd loved it as kids, who refused to let it fade completely. There was a Marvel comic series, Star Comics, specifically that expanded the universe a little. Fan sites popped up. Message boards kept the conversation alive. It wasn't massive. It wasn't mainstream. But it was there. And then, decades later, the reboot talk started. Super 7 announced plans. A live-action film got scripted but never actually made. people started taking another look at the original series, not as a failed Thundercats clone, but as its own weird thing. In 2025, MeTV Toons started airing the show again, new generation discovering it, old fans revisiting it. And you know what's funny? When you watch it now, divorced from the toy failures and the rushed production and all the behind-the-scenes chaos, it's actually kind of charming. Yeah, it's formulaic. Yeah, it's a toy commercial. Yeah, they reused the same transformation footage until your eyes glazed over. But it was also doing something different. The mob angle was unique. The designs were genuinely cool. The voice acting was solid. And there's something oddly grounded about a show where the villains aren't trying to conquer the universe or destroy all life. They're just criminals doing crimes in space. They rob banks. They steal stuff. They get yelled at by their boss when they fail. It's weirdly relatable for a show about cyborg bird people. SilverHawks was never going to be Thundercats. It came too fast, burned too bright, and ended before it had the chance to become something more. But for 65 episodes, for 12 weeks in 1986, it gave us transforming mob bosses and telepathic twins, and a mime inventor and a villain named Yes Man, who just wanted his boss to stop yelling at him. It wasn't perfect. Most of the time, it wasn't even great, but it existed. Fully. Completely. And now you know what actually happened to it. The real story. Beginning to end. If you made it this far, thanks for sticking around. More cartoon histories coming soon. Partly metal. Partly real. Totally SilverHawks.